I'm back! Dark bleatings, everybody. I'm back. My month of May, when I read 63 books, my review request, broke me mentally way more than I thought, and I've been exhausted until now. So sorry for the total lack of videos for the last month. I thought it would be fun to talk about my top 10 horror reads of the year so far, because we've just passed the halfway point. We're 6 months into the year now. I thought I'd do a little check-in of my favourite horror reads. Now, I have mentioned most of these before, so I won't, dwell too long on them if I have talked about them extensively already. And also, I'm not going to be doing these in any particular order, because at the end of the year I like to give out a Happy Goat Horror Award for Best Novel of the Year, so I don't want to rank them now and sort of spoil what's in the lead. So I'm just going to talk about my 10 favourite books and who might enjoy them, and I hope that there are new things for you to pick up. So first of all, let's go with Among the Living by Tim Lebbon, who you all know is one of my very favourite writers, and I realised yesterday that of all the authors that I review on my website, I've reviewed the most books by Tim Lebbon's by quite a bit. I think Mark Towse is second. So this is an Arctic horror story with a sort of eco-horror backdrop, but it doesn't lean that much into that, but the circumstances for what's happening are because of climate change and the shift in environment. There is a cave that two groups are trying to access because it wasn't accessible for people up until now, but things have thawed and now people can get in. We've got a group of environmentalist types that want to sort of protect the scenery and the landscape and, not cause human chaos just because it's now possible. And we've got another group that are going to see what they can potentially get from this place. They go down into the cave. There is what can only be described as a tableau of frozen people down there that look like they were in some sort of worship, and something moves. So when they leave the cave, they have unfortunately brought something back up to the surface with them, something potentially apocalyptic. This is a great book. I think I was recommending this to fans of things like The Thing. I think you'd really enjoy this. I want to say The Last of Us, but I think I might be thinking of the wrong game. Whichever one has the cordyceps thing, which it's not really leaning into that, but there are elements of those horror properties. So if that's your kind of jam, I think you'd absolutely love this. It's a real fast-paced page turner of a read, as most Tim Lebbon books are. My favourite thing about this is how he uses the terrain. Tim is an outdoorsy type that does a lot of triathlons, and he swims in outdoor bodies of water. Lakes, rivers, things like that. Cycles, runs, does mountains, all sorts of things. So he always works in landscapes that are embedded in the horror rather than just working as just places that things are set. He always weaves the way the characters are is very much integral to the actual story, and I've never read anyone better at doing that, at working in a landscape and making things so interesting that way. And my favourite thing about this book is how the landscape, which is icy and snowy and absolutely treacherous, works as a secondary antagonist to our characters. It's just really scary, really fast-paced. It's got this great sense of you're racing against the clock kind of thing, so it's really, really tense. Yeah, and wholeheartedly recommend this and think it's a great read. Next up, The Women in the Woods by S.Q. McGrath, which I have gone on about incessantly over the last 2 months or so. This is a folk horror, I would say, about a woman called Min and her son who are hiking, and they kind of go off trail and get lost in the woods, and they are not experienced hikers and campers, so they're really not equipped for this. Luckily or unluckily for them, they stumble upon a commune of really nice, friendly people. So that's the present, and then we also have chapters that take us into Min's past. So in the present, she's with her son in this commune. They have some weird rules, and things keep coming up that means that they can't leave, so it's very scary. And then we're jumping into Min's past, where we learn that she had a twin brother called Wolf that she's really, really close to. We know that something really bad happened between her and her son at some point. Obviously that's resolved now because we're in the present with them as well. And also she was a teacher and had a really horrifying, scary experience with a student that sort of latched onto her. And I was most impressed with how the author managed to make those past sections so tense, because we already know that Min must have got out of it okay, because she's alive and she's well and she's with her son and she's hiking. So I was really impressed by how the author had me on the edge of my seat in those past sections, despite already knowing that, like what was going to come later. I started to get very unnerved by why she was illuminating this area of Min's past, which is where the real horror is. Also, the horror elements. This is a slow burn book, as in like the fuse is lit. It's sizzling along nicely at a fair pace, but you know, it's building very slowly, and then the third act is one massive explosion of blood and viscera and gore and absolutely horrific imagery, which I wasn't expecting, because the storytelling was like fairly chill until then, you know. So I was super impressed with this. I really think this author deserves a lot more readers, and yeah, wholeheartedly recommend this for people who like stories about people who are sort of isolated. I guess the past sections of Min's life work as like, if you're looking at sort of Vogler's mythic structure, then that would be the ordinary world. She's a teacher and she has a family and da 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 da. And then when we're in the present, it's like they've gone into this commune with these people that are very like alien to them, and so we've like stepped into the special world, if that makes sense. So yeah, it's got sort of like elements of like the mythic hero's journey kind of thing, but not quite. So yeah, I'll wholeheartedly recommend that. Next up, I went on about this one a lot as well, Rachel Harrison's Black Sheep, which I can thank the Abominable Book Club for showing me the way to Rachel Harrison, because I'd never read her before and I don't know if I'd heard of her either. It's hard to talk much about this book without giving any spoilers, but I did put a full dedicated review up on the channel if you're interested. I'll link it in the description. So it's about a young lady called Vesper who's basically ostracized from her family and her hometown and everything. She's moved away because she just comes from a really religious community, and she sort of questions her faith at some point in her adolescence, and basically to not be a devout worshipper and you know, an active church member means you're just cutting yourself off from your whole family. It was giving me sort of like Westboro Baptist Church vibes, kind of religious feel, and then there becomes a reason that she should return home, even though she always said she was never going to. So yeah, she goes back, and I can't talk any more about it without giving a massive spoiler, and I don't want to give a spoiler because it's a plot point that is introduced fairly early on, but I don't want to take away the absolute delight that I felt from anyone else when you get this revelation. I was cackling like a little witch with delight when I got to it. So yeah, this is a great read, and I wholeheartedly recommend this one as well if you enjoy sort of religious horror. Next, Frostbite by Angela Sylvaine. I didn't realise how much I actually loved this until I was taking stock of all the books I've read so far this year. Just for reference, I have read, according to my Goodreads chart, I've read 94 books this year. I think maybe 2 of them weren't horror, so we're working with around, let's say 90. So these are my top 10 out of the 90 books I've read so far. And Frostbite just keeps coming back to me. It's so funny. It has a potentially apocalyptic scenario going on. A meteor crashes in this sort of small town, and then the wildlife start acting a bit weird, and we have sort of like, they're not rabid, but picture rabid prairie dogs going around attacking everyone. And that alone, that element alone really sold me on this book. But also we've got a quite easy to like, self-sacrificing, flawed protagonist, main character, with a platonic friendship with somebody else, which is really nice to read. And you know, the stakes, her personal stakes are very high, and then of course we've got like the outside stakes of everything that's going on as well. She's sort of just running around this town trying to hook up with people, trying to figure out what's going on and trying to figure out how to stop it, but it's got this really sort of like dark comical aspect to it as well. So it was just an absolute hoot to read. It's got quite a lot of like emotional weight and like stakes, as I said, but with a like comedic tone to it, so I really enjoyed that one as well. It was great. Next up, in a similar sort of comedy horror branch, Mantis by Erica Summers. That's one of my favourite books ever, and Mantis is our main character and is possibly my favourite protagonist of all time. This is about a woman called Mantis, and we know that she lost the love of her life, which is very sad, and so she's just sort of like hooking up with random women now, just like sort of putting notches on the bedpost, and she's fairly like non-committal about it. And then during one of these hookups right at the beginning of the book, a demon appears in her bathroom, and she like, it's like this has happened 1,000 times to her, and she slays it, and then realizes, you know, oh, the demons are back, so something must be going down. And so she reassembles the old gang that have killed demons before, and the old gang is made up of exotic dancers and a DJ that likes one of the dancers and wants to tag along. And I swear this book had me laughing out loud. Like, the characters were great. Like, even if the plot had been crap, I would have been on board till the end for the characters, but it wasn't crap. It was great. And this, we got like, we know that there's something like big going on, but it's just the way that it unfolds and all the details come up. Like, you don't realize how big this is until you kind of get into the third act. So we've got our sort of band of slightly dysfunctional but kick-ass demon slayers, I guess that I'd like to call them, on a road trip collecting artifacts and things. So it's kind of like a horror comedy adventure story, again with extremely high stakes, and it does have quite a lot of emotional weight. And then you know, when bad things do happen, like, you do feel it, like you are sad, but also I can't stop smiling because it's just also so funny. And Mantis, the way she speaks and thinks is really funny to me, and we're in her head all the time, so it was just like a really delightful, pleasurable place to be. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Erica Summers now. I think she's a really great writer, one of my new favourite authors, and yeah, Mantis is the book I'd like to really recommend to everyone. I've read a few of her works this year, but that one was like by far my favourite. Next, this won't be a surprise to anyone, but All the Fiends of Hell by Adam Nevill. I have lent out my copy. I never ever lend out books anymore because I never get them back, but I do trust you, Sherelle. I trust you. I trust that my book is alive and well in your house, and that no harm has come to it. And if harm has come to it, then I might have to channel the essence of All the Fiends of Hell. All the Fiends of Hell is about a guy, Carl, I think his name is. I kept saying Kyle before, I think it's Carl. And he's really sick. He's had like a virus, and one night he's been hallucinating because he's super sick, and he hears bells, like super loud bells, and there's like a red light in the sky. And then when he gets up the next day thinking that he imagined all of this, he finds that he is entirely alone in his town. All of the front doors have been left open, as if everyone wandered out into the night at some point, and it just disappeared. The only people that are left are people who are bedbound, debilitated, maybe disabled, so people who couldn't physically get up and walk outside, basically, is what he concludes. And he starts like looking outside of his town a little bit, but it's a ghost land. There is no one there. And then he realizes that unfortunately he is not quite alone. There is something around, and it's, oh my god, it's from these creatures are referred to as the horrors, and they're already horrific enough when Nevill introduces them, but he keeps upping the ante with them. It's absolutely horrific. I think it might be the scariest book I've ever read. I'm not the only person who thinks that. My friend Eric Smith, hi bestie, also said he thinks it's the scariest book he's ever read. I didn't read the synopsis or anything before I picked it up, because if it's an Adam Nevill book, it's an automatic buy and read anyway. But if you haven't read the synopsis and you haven't heard anything about this book, I really recommend going in without reading the synopsis. I spoke with Adam, and he said that sort of like in decisions on how to market the book, he kind of had to give away what the subgenre of horror we're in is. I didn't know that when I went in though, so I had a slightly different reading experience, which I think might have been a bit scarier, because I didn't know beforehand what was happening. So yeah, I would recommend going in like that if you can, but everyone I know that has read it that already had that information also didn't seem to have their reading experience hindered by that knowledge. I can't really talk much about it. I did a dedicated review video on that as well, which I'll also link if you want to see it, but yeah, what a great book. Next up, something completely different. Although I say that, I've had a lot of sort of apocalyptic stories on this list, so yeah, my tastes have not changed enough for ages. But we've got The Glut by Matthew Cash, which is absolutely disgusting. So disgusting. This is about a guy whose name I don't remember again. I'm so bad with character names, sorry. But this is about a guy who's struggling with being obese, and it's the first thing that I really loved about this is that firstly, we don't normally get protagonists that are obese, and I realised that when I started reading this is like normally yeah, we're not normally in that perspective, and it was actually quite refreshing. And the other thing that I loved about the perspective was sort of how empathetically this experience was conveyed, and it really reframed weight problems like that to me, because there's a lot I don't understand. Obviously I'm not a doctor, and you know, I have my chubbier years, I go up and down a bit, but I've never been obese, so I don't know what that feels like, and I don't know what it's like to be treated badly by other people because of my weight. And it really attached me to the character, and I didn't like him. I didn't like him in that, like, his thoughts are kind of mean, he's very bitter, but you can completely understand why he's so guarded and slightly prickly and hostile, I would say. So yeah, that was the character, and I felt very like connected straight away, and I really appreciated how the character was formed. And he and then we get onto the story. He meets a guy that was in his shoes very recently, but now he's super fit and healthy and has a great body all of a sudden, like not overnight, but practically overnight in weight loss terms. It shouldn't have been possible. So our main character wants to know the secret, and there is a secret. And there is a process you can go through to kind of like snap your fingers and get rid of this problem. Unfortunately, you know, this is a horror story, so with getting rid of one problem, you are creating another huge problem, and it's absolutely insane. Like, the plot is insane, the premise is insane. It's brilliant. I've never read anything like this. You think as well initially that you're reading about just one man's struggle and then maybe the second person's struggle, but this turns into a practically global event, and I never saw that coming. Like, there's no way you can understand the scope of where this goes. Like, there was no way you could predict it. So it's, yeah, this was, and obviously there's some like dark humour in here as well, but the imagery this conjures up, I will say there's a scene in this book that I had to skim read a little bit after a few paragraphs because it was making me feel sick, but don't let that deter you. I'm not someone who really enjoys like super grotesque stuff, and I stay away from extreme horror, and I wouldn't put this in an extreme horror category, but there are scenes that are absolutely disgusting, so just be warned. But also it's great, so yes, I highly recommend. Next, we have a short story collection by Lydia Prime and Jill Girardi, We're Not Ourselves Today. This is such a great collection. This is one of the best short story collections I've ever read. Jill and Lydia take it in turns, so you get alternating stories from them in this, and they've got distinctive writing styles, but where they mesh very well together in an overall book is that they both have this great string of dark humor, very dark humor running through them. So you get these like absolutely like balls out, good old-fashioned classic horror stories. You know, there's shades of Clive Barker, there's shades of King in here, there's shades of like that old Tales from the Crypt Keeper show, but you know, with contemporary writing styles with like very dark comedic twists on a lot of it. I I wholeheartedly recommend it. It's a great addition to any horror shelves. If you're someone that enjoys short stories, you have to have this if you're a horror fan. I was pleasantly, unpleasantly surprised, like towards the end of a lot of these stories, where I thought I could predict where they were going and I couldn't, and they went to like way greater places than I thought they were going to go. I think the first story in the collection is my favourite one. I can't remember. I think that might have been Lydia's, but I can't remember now. I'm sorry. But yeah, it's yeah, such a strong collection, and I loved every story in it. Next, I can't remember off the top of my head the full title, but it's This or Good Boy, a novel by Gavin Dillinger. If you've seen any of our recent TikTok and Instagram reels, we're in a social media feud right now, and I've got very good reasons for it. So this is about a guy who moves into a house without bothering to go and look at it first. And if you think that sounds unrealistic, I know two guys that put down money for a house. Turned out the house didn't exist and they'd been scammed, and we all told them, but you know, what can you do? So yeah, he buys this house, he moves in, and you know, he's looking around and it needs some touch-ups, and there's a few things wrong here and there, and there's a portal to hell in his bedroom, and he spends his nights trying to scoop things back into the hole that are surfacing, and he's like sort of gatekeeping this portal, trying to make sure that the foes of hell aren't just spewing out everywhere. It's a comedy horror novel. It's so funny. I begrudgingly admit, because you know, Gavin Dillinger, and it's yeah, again, the scope of it gets very big. One day something crawls out of the portal and it's a dog. I can't remember the dog's name, but it was something great. Yeah, my memory no works so good for actual names of characters or anything at the moment. And he decides to keep the dog, and so this is a man and his dog on a journey trying to figure out stuff about hell, and he accidentally drags in some people from his past to this scenario that's unfolding, that he's the center of, and he doesn't even know why he's the center of it. And yeah, it's a really great tale. If I'm able to, I will link our feud videos in the description of this, in case, because I don't want to the start of the feud is a slight spoiler for where the guy ends up near the end of the book, so I won't, you know, tell you here, but it's I'll put the links down below if you're interested. And lastly, witches horror. It's They Are Cursed Like You by Holley, Cornetto and S.O. Green. This book is great. This is I always whinge that I can't find enough witch books. This is about a group of adult witches who are, I say a group, a coven of witches, sorry, and one day their luck runs out. Literally, they've got these like lucky rabbit's feet, and the feet shrivel up, and all of the spells that they've cast over the years to avert disaster or bring good things into their lives, all of the magic is now being undone, so all of their lives snowball very quickly. Our main character has a really huge sad problem that I think anyone would empathize with, so I was like on the edge of my seat for her, and I wanted to know what was going on. And they kind of have a leader of this coven that's a bit mysterious, and she's a bit like like she's not treating this with the gravity it feels like it deserves. And then we also have a group of teenage girls who cross paths with these adult witches, and then they want to be a coven as well. So this is not YA, but we are jumping between viewpoints of a YA character and an adult character. It's got everything you want in a witch story. It's got, you know, magic and dark deals and hideous bloody murders that you don't expect, and characters that seem sugary sweet initially, but actually they're not. And yeah, all manner of great witchy things, which this was everything I wanted in a witch novel. I always complain that most of the witch books I come across are YA books, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they're more like paranormal, adventure, very light on the horror usually, the books I come across, where I want flat out horror with witches. There's so much scope for great scary shit with witches, and obviously this is a contemporary setting, so we're not in the past or anything, we're like in today's time. So yeah, we're dealing with sort of like witches of this age dealing with some very dark stuff from the past. Alrighty, so that is my top 10 reads of the year so far. I hope there's been something here that you want to pick up. I'll see you Sunday with an author interview, and then next Thursday with another video. I can't think of a way to end my videos still, so bleat.